He wakes up, already alert, already searching. The room is unfamiliar, but that isn't unusual. What unsettles him is not the place it's the absence of certainty. There is no sense of before, no emotional residue. Just the present moment, sharp and exposed. Like stepping into daylight after anesthesia. He checks his pockets. Habitual, methodical. A pen. Polaroids. Notes written in his own handwriting, but with a tone that feels strangely impersonal, brief, instructional, urgent. They are not memories. They are warnings. This is how his life begins each day, not with continuity, but with reconstruction. His name is Leonard. He knows this because it's written down. He knows he is looking for someone because the evidence insists on it. He knows there was a loss so profound it fractured his ability to remember anything new. And he knows above all that forgetting is not neutral. Forgetting is dangerous, so he compensates. He builds a system. Photographs replace trust. Notes replace instinct. Tattoos replace memory itself etched directly into his body. Facts carved into flesh so they cannot disappear. When his mind does, he believes this makes him objective, pure, unburdened by emotion's tendency to distort truth. But objectivity is a comforting illusion. Leonard moves through the world with a quiet confidence, guided by rules he wrote for himself at moments he no longer remembers. Every interaction feels provisional. Every person is evaluated not by who they are, but by what his notes say they were last time. Don't believe his lies. She will help you. He is dangerous. Each sentence feels decisive, final. But none of them explain why. That gapped absence of context is where doubt should live. Instead, Leonard fills it with certainty. He tells himself a story about who he is. A man wronged, a man pursuing justice, a man whose mission gives meaning to an otherwise fragmented existence. The story is simple enough to survive without memory. It doesn't require nuance. Only direction, dots, and direction for Leonard is everything. As he moves closer to his goal, or what he believes is his goal, the world seems to cooperate. Clues align. Faces repeat. Patterns emerge. It feels reassuring, almost elegant, as though fate itself is guiding him forward. But there's an unease that never quite leaves, a low-level tension that hums beneath every decision. Because Leonard isn't just missing memories, he's missing hesitation. Most people pause because their past warns them. They remember consequences, regret, pain. Leonard doesn't have that luxury. Every decision feels new, unweighted by emotional aftermath. He can be angry without remembering why, violent without recalling remorse, certain without ever reviewing the costing that sensei. He is dangerously free. The people around him sense this before he does. Some try to help, some try to use him, some simply step aside and let the momentum carry him forward. Because stopping him would require explaining a truth too complex to survive his condition. And complexity is fragile in a world that resets every 15 minutes. Leonard begins to trust his system more than himself, more than other people, more than instinct. If something is written down, it must be true. If it's permanent, it must be reliable. But permanence does not guarantee honesty. It only guarantees endurance. At the midpoint of his journey, something subtle shifts, not an explosion. Not a revelation shouted aloud, just a quiet realization. The system doesn't protect him from manipulation. It enables Italiano because whoever controls the information controls Leonard. And slowly, almost reluctantly, story begins to turn inward. What if the facts he's clinging to were selected, not discovered? What if the certainty he relies on was engineered by a version of himself who wanted something more than truth? Leonard confronts an unsettling possibility, that his condition isn't merely a tragedy, it's a shield. Without memory, he never has to sit with doubt, never has to live with guilt. never has to endure the slow erosion of a belief proven wrong. If something hurts too much, it can simply be forgotten. If a truth threatens a story, it can be omitted. And here, the film reveals its quiet cruelty. Leonard is not an unreliable narrator because he lies. He is unreliable because he believes. He believes the version of himself that wrote the notes. He believes the tattoos because they feel definitive. He believes that facts, once fixed, are immune to corruption. But belief without memory is not truth. It's momentum. As the descent begins, consequences surface not as plot twists, but as emotional echoes. People react to Leonard with fear, exhaustion, pity. They have history with him that he cannot feel, wounds he inflicted that he cannot remember, promises he broke without ever experiencing the shame of breaking them. To Lena, each encounter feels fresh. To everyone else, it's repetition. And repetition without learning is a kind of violence. The closer he gets to what he thinks is closure, the more the question sharpens. What happens when the story ends? Because Leonard doesn't live toward resolution. He lives toward continuation. If the truth were fully revealed, if the mission were completed, what would remain? A man alone with no memory and no purpose. An empty present with nothing to pursue. So the system adapts, not accidentally. Intentionally. Leonard chooses, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps deliberately, to preserve the chase, to write notes that sustain the narrative, to create a future version of himself who will wake up angry, motivated, convinced. There is still something left to fix. Justice becomes secondary, meaning becomes primary. And in that moment, the story reframes itself completely. This is not a film about memory loss. It's a film about self-deception, not about how identity is not built from truth alone, but from the stories we repeat until they feel inevitable, about how certainty can be more dangerous than ignorance when it's never questioned. Leonard doesn't ask whether he should continue. He only asks how. And the tragedy is not that he forgets, it's that he chooses to. The final moments do not offer relief. They offer recognition. Leonard walks forward, armed with conviction, stripped of doubt, comforted by a lie he will never remember creating. The cycle continues, flawless in its cruelty. Because as long as he forgets, he never has to confront who he has become. And perhaps that's the most unsettling truth of all. Memory doesn't just preserve pain, it preserves responsibility. Without it, we're capable of anything and accountable to no one, not even ourselves.